Hi, this is Terry Calloway. I'm utilizing a compare and contrast teaching strategy for social studies. I'm looking at immigration, politics, and right after World War I, and then comparing it with immigration post September 11th, 2001. Compare and contrast is actually a strategy to analyze similarities and likenesses, or similarities, likenesses, and differences of two or more places, people, events, or things that are being compared. Compare and contrast gives students a way to organize information into meaningful ways to understand it, be able to summarize it, and explain it. So basically, they can look at two things or people or places, give a analysis, be able to analyze it to see if they're similar or different, and then they should be able to explain it. How compare and contrast is used in the classroom basically is through a cause and effect methodology, looking at those different things that we discussed. Students analyze and evaluate how two or more people or things are the same or different. We use keywords or phrases to assist them determining that and being able to get clues on how it's similar or different. Sometimes when we are looking at putting a lesson together for the classroom using a compare and contrast model, and that strategy in the classroom, we look at a couple of different general questions like what are we looking at, how are they alike, how are they different, and what is the conclusion, like what are we trying to get the students to. These are a few words that you would use, or phrases that you would use to give students a clue on comparing and contrasting. Are they the same or are they different? Likewise for compare, or conversely for different. So the metacognition for the students were asked to complete a think right on prior knowledge. The students were asked to read passages in the book during the direct instruction. The students were also given guided questions to work with a partner, and the students were given a article to ask questions to the book, allowing themselves questioning using post-it notes during that time when they were reading, so that we could then come back together and discuss it to check for student understanding. Okay, so I'm going to show a little bit of the video now and be able to show how the students were working in the classroom. Immigration, politics in the 20s, after World War II, after World War I, versus after September 11th, 2001, terrorist attacks. Okay? Okay. So these are some things that we can think about, and in a normal classroom, it would be kind of like a think right. So you would get pen and paper, and you would be writing down your thoughts, and then sometimes you would talk to a partner. Okay. In this instance, we're just going to try and maybe talk about it a little bit because it's kind of hard for you. No. All right. So how would you react if you encountered someone from another country? You're in the United States today and you encountered someone from another country. So think about how you would react to that. Would you engage them in a conversation or a dialogue or talking to them? And how would it be if you didn't speak the same language?
Is that a question?
Yeah.
How would I act if I met someone and they didn't speak the same language?
Yeah, if you met someone, would you talk to them? And if you did talk to them, what if you didn't speak the same language? How would you guys communicate?
I communicate with mail,
You use electronic devices, right? There's some ways to talk.
Google it.
Some people try
do I have to talk to these people? Usually I don't have to talk to foreigners.
right there alone, you think of it as a foreigner as opposed to someone else that's like either visiting here or.
Well, either way, they're foreigners.
Right. Okay. Does that have a negative connotation though? The word foreigner.
Not in my eyes.
Okay.
They're just not. Yeah, they're just here visiting, or they're here because they're working.
Okay.
But I would assume
from different countries treated differently in the United States today?
Oh yeah,
Okay, so why do you say that?
because they're on the news all the time, being thrown back in their country.
Okay.
Or
There's a
placed
lot of
out.
stuff in the news right now, right? There's a lot about
Yeah.
people coming from South America and coming through the border, right? And
And if it
specifically,
isn't that, then it's if it's not that, then it's fighting from the terrorist attacks that we've had. And if it's not that, it's just fighting between one country taking over another. And if it isn't that, it's our economical struggles with China and that kind of thing, where we're losing jobs all to foreign countries.
okay, good. So that's a very good
It's
anticipating
constantly.
of what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about how we look at immigration, how we look at it economically, how we look at it politically, and how we look at it socially. So you're able to identify some of those different things based on some of the knowledge that you have from previous lessons, or just from knowledge that you know, and then some of the things that how we're going to look at today. Okay. So after, so we'll look at a little bit on World War I, and after World War I, how immigrants started to come into the country, and then how they were looked at post World War I. Because we kind of had a very isolationist, and we've talked about this in previous lessons. We've had an isolationist view up until World War I. We kind of stayed out of the world's politics, issues, wars. Okay.
All right, so that was a little bit of what we did in the classroom. The students were asked basically to go through guided questions. They were also asked to discuss with their partner and providing information from previous lessons and developing information in terms of World War One, post World War One. Students were asked to work with a partner and think, pair, share activity, and they were also asked to look at political cartoons throughout the lesson. They were provided them with information in reference to Sacco and Vanzetti, communism, immigration post World War I, and then comparing it to immigration post 9/11. The students were then asked to complete a political cartoon of their own, which they were then asked to compare and contrast the two post World War I and post 9/11. Students were given guided questions to understand or check for understanding. They were also provided a reading selection where they were utilizing post-it notes to ask the reading selection questions and then discussion after that.
So you had a little bit of knowledge on what happened after World War I. Now we're going to compare it to what happened after September 11th. Okay? So in the 1990s, there was a significant decrease in crime. The economy was booming, people had jobs, there was a general good feeling in the 1990s in the United States. Now, we had some significant violence start to occur. Okay? And a lot of it tended to be around immigrants. Right?
Immediately after the trade center.
Well, before even. Leading up to that, okay? We're kind of giving you some background like I did in the World War I stuff. I'm giving you a little bit of background about right up until 2001, right? So in 1993, you had the original World Trade Center bombings, okay? Which they set off the car bombs, okay? Then in 1995, you had the terrorist attack on the Oklahoma City. Remember Terry McVeigh?
Yeah, but that was an American.
Right. They think there was some, international, but even so,
And I don't even think that the Trade Center bombing was designated to a foreign country immediately.
Well, it was after.
I mean, I was
You were a
a bit
kid,
younger.
yeah.
I mean,
You were
I
in
was
high
still a
school,
senior.
Yeah. All right. So these things, though, acts of violence, though, started to shake some of that good feeling that we had in the 90s of the prosperity, of the jobs, of the economic. It started to shake some of that political aspects, and even into the social. Okay, that we said we were going to talk about. And then comes 2001, where we had the terrorist attacks in Pennsylvania, the Pentagon, and both of the Twin Towers of the Trade Center. Okay? So this is where we would talk to someone else. Okay, obviously you can't do that here, but it's called a think, pair, share. So you would write down your thoughts, and then you would talk to somebody else. Okay, so what was the U.S. like for immigrants after World War I? You can talk to me. What was it like? In the picture, who's in the picture? What are some of the political and social changes to the world after World War I?
This picture right here,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of crap on it.
What's happening in the 1920s? What's communism, and how is communism viewed in the U.S.?
One of this picture here.
Yeah, what's in the picture? You can just
A
talk.
bunch of people.
Okay, what's happening to those people?
It's kind of hard to tell. Looks like half of them are running one way, and then
So
yeah,
why-
they're running from something.
Okay, running
You
from
can't
something.
even tell what.
620, please. Okay, there's an artist rendering there. What do you see in the artist rendering?
It's one of the political cartoon deals.
Local cartoon.
So these are what, the protesters over here?
Mm-hmm. Sacco Vanzetti and the governor there.
That's the governor.
Vanzetti said. They essentially, up until the time they were executed, and there's a little quote there on page 620.
Yeah.
You don't have to read that now. Read through something.
Okay, so
Alright, so let's focus back on the question that I have here. Let's kind of come back together here and we'll talk about it as a group. What were the reasons, according to Sacco and Vanzetti, for their imprisonment and conviction?
okay, say it again.
What were their reasons? Why were they convicted? Why were they arrested?
Because they're Italian.
And what else? Anything else?
I mean, they're anarchists.
Right, so their political view
Troublemakers.
and the fact that they were foreigners.
So the students are asked to read through some parts of the lesson. Then they were asked to read a selection at the end on September 11th about immigrants and the Patriot Act. In future, I would probably give additional time for students to come up with some of their own questions throughout the lesson and some of the guided questions. I would probably provide more information on the Patriot Act earlier in the discussion, maybe even providing a copy of the Patriot Act so the students could read it themselves. And I would probably give more information on detainees in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, because that was a question that definitely came up throughout it and how it referenced being able to hold people or detainees. Strong points in the lesson: the discussion with the students on immigration was a strong point. The discussion comparing post-World War I and World War II, September 11th was a strong point. The weak points included not having enough information on the Patriot Act and not having enough probably reading in the lesson for the students to do themselves for all actual reading. The lesson was difficult because it had been many years since the student that I had was looking at this information, so they were not really having the best engaging of prior knowledge. It was difficult at times. Lexicon was difficult because I only had one student, so the think, write, pair, share, pair activities were kind of hard to complete. And I could have provided additional reading selections to the students throughout the lesson. So evaluation on this lesson basically would show that I need probably a little bit more in terms of reading, and it would have definitely been easier if I had had more students. But I think overall the lesson went pretty well in terms of, being able to show that the compare and contrast model for social studies works well in teaching that and teaching it through reading. Thank you.